Welcome everyone to interview number 20 of OSU Improvement Month. Today with Reused. Welcome. Hello.
Hello.
Hey. So
Hey.
I suspect a lot of people may be familiar with you already, but just in case, could you give a introduction to who you are as a player and what people probably recognize you for?
I am Reused. I'm a 16-year-old speed player from Texas. Probably just know me as a speed player. Probably more specifically something like uh, Alice, I think,
What's
and now
Alice?
Lionheart.
Oh, this the
Oh,
score.
Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, yeah,
Ah, okay. So I didn't know you're from Texas.
yeah.
Is it cold there
I
right now?
It is actually pretty cold for Texas standards.
Oh dear.
So
So so you must have started, well, I guess when you were 12 or so, or 11-ish.
yeah, I started when I was like almost 12.
So can you walk us through how you found the game and sort of what like that story was from the very beginning?
Well, I used to play Minecraft like a ton with a lot of old friends, and one of them played Osu, or I guess he discovered Osu, and he was like, "Hey, I think this would be a game that you'd like." And I tried it out, and the first thing we did was play multi, and I didn't know how to play, so I bought him every score, but I think I didn't actively play until like the end of the month,
Mm,
and like February
Okay,
is
so
when I started to play a lot.
January
I started,
2018 and like February
yeah.
2018. Okay.
So
So
I discovered Osu from a friend.
okay, got it. And then were you just kind of like instantly like from then on you kind of just kept playing actively, or was there a specific time where you really started taking it more seriously?
I kind of actively played like every now and then. I was still like mainly Minecraft. Uh, like at the time, I think I was grinding Minecraft and Siege.
Ah,
So it was like Minecraft, Siege, and Osu.
were you like competitive with Minecraft at all? I don't know if that's the right term
Yep.
to use. Oh, really?
I was a tad bit of a competitive player.
Let's go. Do you feel like that competitive mindset sort of transferred over to Osu as well?
Not at the time, but I think eventually once I moved on from Minecraft and moved on to other things like Osu and eventually CS:GO, it did transfer over pretty heavily.
So that sort of competitive drive, what exactly is that? Is like what goes into or what sort of fuels that competitive drive for you?
What fuels it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just always like improving at things. If I'm able to, I try and strive for more improvement, just any bit that I can.
So some people, actually, someone sent in a question to you, and they're talking about your improvement specifically between May to July 2019, so like summer 2019. And so looking at your play count graph, it looks like you were taking the game sort of, I mean, you were playing actively, but kind of on the side of your other things. And then it sort of seems like around like May, June, July 2019, your play count spiked super hard to like 4,000 per month. So
Yeah, that's I think that's when I began like playing Minecraft way less, and I was like trying to hard to grind Osu because early on, like a few months after I started playing, I also bought a tablet.
okay.
I heard those were good.
But it was still pretty casual at that time.
Yeah, I was still like a little guy, just trying to get his way in Osu.
Did you have any early inspirations back then, or was it mostly just kind of playing with your friends and playing for fun?
I it was just mostly playing for fun because I didn't really know anything about the community or interact with it much until 2019. So for all of 2018, I didn't really have any specific like inspirations or anything. But in 2019, when I started to like take the game more seriously, and I had like inspirations. One was like the main one was Ryu K. He was a good inspiration to me for speed.
And was speed always the skill set that interested you even when you were really new to the game, or what types of maps did you sort of grow up with, so to speak?
Uh, it was mostly aim. I was mostly an aim player back then, so I didn't have any speed at all. I couldn't even do 200.
So like nomad type aim stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
Nomad, and then I played some tech as well, or tried to at least.
Do
But
you? Oh, you can
speed
finish.
was a big interest.
Okay, so it was always something that you sort of like were really
Hmm.
interested in. Okay. And so, what was your process from basically not being able to do 200 at all up to like kind of gradually building up your speed? Was it like was there a certain thought process to it, or did you just kind of like start throwing DT on everything?
Oh, you lagged a little bit.
Oh, um, interesting.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. My internet might like my Discord might crash, and
Uh,
if that happens, then I might BRB for like 3 minutes to make sure everything's okay.
that's fine.
Um, so what was that process at the time when you were like barely able to stream, like, or barely even able to play 200, and going from that to starting to play DT and like improve your speed? Was that most like, was there a specific process that went behind that? Or was it mostly just kind of throwing DT on everything?
Kind of just throwing DT on everything because I kind of wanted to go for passes a lot with DT, and with that came like a lot of higher BPM maps and mashing. But eventually, I like learned the BPMs and stuff. So over like the course of 3 years, because it took me a long time to learn speed. I don't think many people realize that because my BPM cap for a while was like 210 up until 2020, I think. No, 2019 was like a big year for my speed because it was like at the start of the year it was 210, and then as my inspiration was Ryuk and like a bunch of other speed players, I played a lot more speed maps and I also went for DT passes a lot. So over time, I it wasn't like comfortable improvement. It was like kind of a little rigid, I guess is the word, or like random, I guess. I don't know.
Like very sporadic, like up and
Yeah,
down, like a huge roller coaster of kind of improving, and I assume kind of feeling like your skill level kind of reset for some periods of
yeah.
time.
Like I would be able to do 270 like 12 notes, and then the next day I wouldn't be able to do 220 at all.
Oh no. Oh,
So I can really pinpoint when my speed improvement was in specific. It was more like I was there and then I wasn't. But uh I think in 2020, by 2020, I did have some speed for 250 at least. So I think I broke my cap somewhere in that year.
what do you think causes that sort of like huge discrepancy in like one day you can play super well and then the next day you can't? Do you feel like there's a specific reason why, or does it really just feel completely random?
I'd assume it's probably just random, but I feel like there's too many factors for me to like really make an assumption off of it. But I would have to assume it's probably like mindset or like the amount of sleep I got probably because my schedule was really bad back then.
Okay, that
It's
probably makes
very
sense.
it was also pretty sporadic.
Okay. So you mentioned that sort of towards the beginning, you just kind of like had no choice but to mash, so to speak, on higher BPMs, and then kind of naturally you were able to play them more comfortably. So someone sent in a question to you, and they said, any tips to build a good tapping technique and getting rid of bad habits like forget and relearn?
Wait, what was the question? Like learning how to break bad habits?
Right, like specifically for tapping technique, any tips on getting rid of bad habits and building a better tapping technique?
Um I have a few bad habits still, so I can try and answer it. probably just like at least what I do is I watch like other people's play styles to see how they tap, and I try it for a bit, like maybe a few days, and if it doesn't feel comfortable, or I start to grow bad habits from that one play style, I just go back to my old play style, and then I try and build on from that. I
You,
guess just like a kind of like a VOD review yourself
oh, oh, so
and see like where you're going wrong with your tapping.
you sort of record your own gameplay and kind of just watch back to see how you're tapping and how you might be messing up.
I do that sometimes, yeah.
So you mentioned
It's pretty good for learning where bad habits begin.
that actually makes sense. And you mentioned that you do know, or you sort of recognize a couple, I guess, quote unquote, bad habits in yourself. Are there any that you can sort of, I guess, describe in a bit more detail in case anyone's curious?
Um, I tap pretty hard, and it kind of I've broken a lot of keyboards in the past because of it.
Oh no.
So I guess that one's not really like so much technique bad habit, like gameplay wise, as it is like I break my equipment pretty quickly. Um, I guess most of the bad habits I have are due to like mostly due to reading, though. Like double tapping certain triples, I do that sometimes, even after years, because I like I don't know, my tapping technique's really weird.
Oh, so as far as like reading the rhythm of those patterns?
Yeah, like there's a few plays that I have where you'll notice I like double tap. Sometimes I double tap like sliders, or I double tap triples.
As in like the first two notes of it, you kind of press both keys and get a 100?
Mm-hmm. It's really weird.
Just did you feel like it's a high AR thing, or does it happen like regardless of the AR?
Regardless.
Oh, interesting. Someone sent a somewhat related question regarding tapping. So they said, to reused, since you full alt, I think it's pertinent to ask you any idea how to fix unbalanced finger strength, such as middle slash ring being weaker than index? And also, does stretching slash working out help on a muscular level to improve tapping?
Um, well, I'll get the muscular out of the way because I'm not the strongest person ever. I'd say I'm actually like one of the weaker Usu players, maybe. But I think full alt's really hard to learn. It's probably harder to learn than single tapping by a long shot. I don't know of many players who do it, but I mean, I actually full alted since I started playing the game. I don't know if anyone knows that. That's a known fact.
Was that just because it felt most natural to you, or what?
Yeah, because Minecraft requires a lot of AD strafing,
Ah, okay.
so I did that a lot,
So
and I guess it transferred over.
are you playing with Inix Ring then, or Inix Middle?
Index middle.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, okay, okay. But you're just talking about like the sort of back and forth motion of your
Yeah,
left hand. Okay, that makes sense.
the alternating motion. I
Right.
guess it transferred over.
So they also asked about like quote unquote fixing unbalanced finger strength. Is that something you have any experience or insight on?
Um, I don't have any really like advice on how to fix it because I still have that issue with my index finger being more dominant, I guess.
Ah, okay. I see. Is that, I almost want to say that could be, if I had to guess, the like kind of double tapping on triples, where if you're full alting and you reach a triple that you kind of have to start on your middle, then it might throw you off.
Yeah, it probably plays a little bit into that.
So do you have any experience single tapping? Do you feel like there's any benefits to that?
Benefits to single tapping? None
Right.
that I've noticed, at least from my experience with it. Because at least in my opinion, I think the skill cap for alternating is a lot higher than single tapping. Because eventually BPMs for like jumps are gonna be too high for you to single tap. That you're just gonna be forced to alternate and learn how to alternate. So I think in the long run, alternating is a lot more beneficial, but single tapping might be better for accuracy.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's a perspective a lot of people have as well. The whole accuracy. Well, I guess everything that you said. So I want to go back to your play history a little bit because you started taking the game or like just playing super actively throughout the second half of 2019, and then around mid to late 2020, you started being you were like much less active at that time. Was there a specific reason, I guess, that you decided to take a break or become less active?
Probably school, a lot of schoolwork at the time.
Ah, okay.
Um, I also was grinding other games to my like the best of my ability because I got into CS:GO around that time.
Ah, okay. Yep, that makes sense. So it almost sounds like you don't ever quite have like a main game, so to speak.
Nope. I switch games a lot.
Interesting. Do you have a favorite or like favorite two or three out of all the
Favorite
ones?
2 or 3 out of all the play.
Yeah.
Um, Osu is obviously the main one. Um, I mean, CS:GO is still pretty fun. I don't play it as much as I used to though. Uh, and I have been playing a lot of Roblox recently with friends,
Oh,
so that's another main one.
what do
I
you
think that's it
think?
though.
What do you think makes Osu so special for you? What do you think is the secret to Osu being such a captivating game for you?
The fact that I got it from a friend, and um, I don't talk to that friend anymore. I haven't talked to him in like 4 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I've tried figuring out how to like reach out to him, but I have like no idea because he
Oh.
doesn't use Skype anymore because that's what we used to talk on,
Oh,
and he doesn't play Osu anymore because he hasn't logged on in 4 years.
I see. Was it a friend from another game, I guess?
Yeah, from Minecraft,
Oh, okay, I see. Dang.
but I don't think he ever played Osu after that. After the time we played,
That's crazy. That's crazy to think about, actually. So I'm curious, you mentioned mindset a little bit, and I know I somewhat asked about it earlier, but I want to ask specifically about mindset and sort of what you would say defines or creates a quote unquote good mindset, especially when it comes to getting better at something.
what what's like a good mindset?
Right, right.
Probably just uh trying your best not to tilt after setting a really good score, and then later on, maybe like a few days later, trying to do the same score or like an equivalent on another map and tilting at yourself for not being good enough. It's like something you don't want to do for a good mindset. I think I think mindset also has a lot to do with your like your actual life as well. Because if you're like living in a mess, I think it'll transfer over to your Osu's mindset, even if you're trying your best to be positive. So I
Ah,
think specifically saying keeping a good mindset for Osu is kind of like it's good, but like it won't work that well in my opinion if you're like outside of Osu, your life is kind of like I don't know, like messy, you know?
right. In what sense, like sort of being on a random schedule or like having a lot of other obligations, or what exactly are you referring to?
Like I don't know, like your schedule's like really messy and you like have a lot of things to do and you're
Okay,
stressed out.
okay, that makes sense. So, what do you usually do on those like really bad days, I guess, where it seems like you sort of experience that relatively often, where you just have like random bad days where you can't really play anything. Let's say you still do want to play USO on that day. Is there anything specific that you end up doing instead on those during those sessions?
Um, Playing other skill sets usually. Because usually if I can't play speed, I'll go like try and practice aim, or I'll play some tech to try and practice that. Because I'm trying to get into tourneys more, so I want to be more not really all rounded. Because I don't really like some certain skill sets, but I want to be more diverse with my skills.
Right. Yeah. I was going to ask about tournaments too, especially since you mentioned you're from Texas. I can't remember if you've ever played in the United States Cup or not.
I got asked to, but I didn't end up playing.
Ah, okay, okay. Is it something you're interested in the future?
Probably, yeah. I think I'll play next year if it's a thing.
Oh, and I'm kind of curious about, or I guess, what was it about tournaments that you just didn't really like back then, and what sort of changed your mind about them?
Um, Scheduling.
Oh,
That's the worst part for tournaments for me.
oh, so
But
you have played some tournaments in the past?
yeah, I've played Speed Cup twice before, and
Okay,
then I played Course Ace in 2021, I think, like last year. And
okay.
then I also played some other tournament that I don't remember. It was like a roulette tournament, kind of like they put a bunch of stuff on a board and rolled it, and people were able to join the BCs and stuff. It was just a really goofy tournament, but we ended up forfeiting, and we played with the team that we were going against in a multi, like it's just a normal multi. But all my other experiences with tournaments were kind of bad just because of scheduling, and I wasn't really that good at tournaments back then. I still am not.
Oh no. So, let me think. So, what? Okay, so when you are trying to focus on sort of other skill sets, so to speak, is it mostly kind of like, I guess, passively when you're having a bad speed day, or are there certain sessions where you do try to focus specifically on those skill sets?
Mostly when I'm just having a bad speed day. But sometimes I'll play if I'm bored as well. I'll play other skill sets.
Someone sent in a question to you. They said, how do you improve your reading? So I don't suspect that reading is your favorite skill set or one that you, I guess, pride yourself on, but I do think that to reach the level that you're at, I think there is definitely some reading that goes into it. But regardless, either that or on those maps that require like nomad or tech and things like that, like as you improve at those skill sets, I think a lot of it actually does come down to reading. So for those skill sets and just kind of in general, what are some processes that you've used to improve your reading?
Well, I think at least for higher AR, my reading's been pretty good, like always, because I always played DT pass maps. Like I would go for DT passes on higher AR maps. So my AR like cap is pretty high, but my lowest AR is pretty bad because I don't play much Nomad. So sometimes there will be days where I can't even read 9.7. So for Nomad, I don't really have any tips, but I did play a lot of like high AR maps with DT. So I guess over time it helped my reading for higher stuff.
So you also mentioned earlier that like every now and then you would kind of not really hit a skill wall, or maybe you would, but it's more of like your skill was just kind of all over the place. What would you say is the most important thing for breaking past those barriers and sort of overcoming those skill walls?
I don't think there's really anything in specific other than like routine, because at the time it was very my routine and stuff was very sporadic, so it's not like I could really pinpoint what made me improve that day, and then what made me steep so low in skill on another day. I think it's like very like random. But usually whenever I like improve at something, I usually try and push that as far as I can. And then if I'm able to do it again the next day, I'll push it even more. So I usually just try and like push my skill cap as much as I can when I'm able to.
So then, what do you still keep trying to push yourself even if you sort of experience like a skill reset, quote unquote?
Yeah, I still try to, but I feel like people like have those days a lot where they like get a really big improvement in skill, and then maybe like a day or two later it just goes away, and it can be very like demotivating for people. At least it was for me a lot. But I think seeing past that and like seeing it as like more of a motivation, like I can be better. I think it's a lot better than like getting sad about it.
It sounds like a lot of it comes down to a lot less about like specific strategies or tactics or like what maps to play during those times, and really just about having the motivation to keep grinding even through those like less, I guess, like troughs in your like overall like skill level.
Yeah. I mean, my mindset's always been pretty good, except for most of 2019. It was pretty bad. I think that was another factor into why my skill is pretty sporadic at that time.
Was there anything specific that you feel like you did at the time that you sort of either wish you didn't or just wouldn't do things in the same way today?
Nothing that I can think of other than like at the time I had a pretty big ego, but that was it.
Like towards like other people in the community, or just sort of like over surrounding yourself? Because I'm not sure how you mentioned you weren't
Just
too active in the community at the time.
yeah, it was mostly just like friends that I played Minecraft with that knew I played Osu, so they also began playing Osu like around the same time I did.
Ah, okay.
So it's mostly just like friends that I already had. But I didn't have ego around them. I had like an ego around myself. Like kind of like I don't know, like if I did really bad, I would like I don't know, like my mindset was really bad back then. So if I did really bad, I would get in a really bad mood.
Ah, I
But if I did
see.
really good, I would be in a really good mood and I would be extremely confident.
I'm looking at your most played maps right now, and I feel like the amount of retries you have on like your most played maps is a lot lower than especially other top players in general, but also I think a lot of other speed players that I've seen their profile of. So I'm sort of curious what your approach is for going for scores and retrying maps in general.
I have a collection for like a lot of maps that I want to try and get a really good score on. So if I'm bored or like not performing as well, I try and or if I'm performing really well, I try and go for that collection.
So you just kind of, I guess, F2 or go through random maps in that collection and play them just a couple times, and then if you don't get it, you just kind of move on.
Uh yeah, pretty much like it. Uh Having collections for stuff that you want to do is really good for improvement as well. Because I've been using a tool, like a mapping or map tool to download maps. And I made a bunch of collections for like different types of tournament maps. So I
Oh,
can try and improve at tournaments and stuff. And then I also have like I have like a collection for grinding whenever I like I'm doing really good. And then I used to just have a collection for like good songs that I liked.
oh, what is that map tool? Can you tell me a bit more about that? What is that program or whatever it is called?
Um I batch beatmap downloader is what it's called. It's good for downloading like a large quantity of a lot of maps like in specific.
Ah, okay, I found it. Oh, this is pretty new
So like
actually.
yeah, so like you just go to map search and then like or I don't know how to download, but you can download maps for like tournaments. There's like a tournament category and stuff, and I've been using that pretty
Oh,
often.
oh yeah, this is cool actually. I did not know about this.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Okay, I will have to keep this in mind. So, other than that, are there any ways that you tend to find maps, or is that kind of the main way these days?
Um, Mostly just F2 spam.
Oh,
Like I've been F2 spamming like a lot of 8 stars plus and above, but I've been also trying to do 7 stars because some 7 stars are really hard.
so you mentioned that for improving higher AR, you kind of just went for passes a lot. Was there anything, or I guess like specific strategy, not really strategies, but I guess like barriers that you had to overcome when you were first breaking into higher AR, like even AR 10 or like 10.1 or 2, for example?
Any barriers?
Right.
Um, Not really. I don't think it was just like a very long and tedious battle of trying to get better at like AR 9.3 and above with DT.
Ah,
Is
okay.
that I think that was my cap for a while.
Do you experiment with things like skins or gamma or anything like that? Or do you feel like there's sort of anything outside of the brute force grind of high AR that has been really helpful for you?
Um, I don't really play with many skins. Like my skins folder is pretty small. I think I switch between like 4 different skins. I think it's good to have different skins for like what you're comfortable with. Like I have a different skin for hidden or nomad or DT. So I think changing skins is like a good habit as long as you're not changing like every 10 skins or like more.
It, that actually makes sense because I feel like especially if you're getting up to like really high ARs, you need to be able to, I guess, get used to that skin and like feel really comfortable reading it.
Yeah, I mean I've been the a big like it was kind of obvious that Ryuk was my inspiration because the skin I've been using since 2019 I think it was Ryukei's skin that he did with time freeze, everything will
Oh,
freeze. And I've just been using that skin since this year, I think, when I started to like change skins more often, like skin elements and stuff.
is there any skill set that you want to improve the most at right now? Any like sort of high priority skills to learn?
Probably tech. Tech is it's a pretty fun like skill set, it looks like. So I want to get better at that.
Is what's the how do I ask this? I almost want to ask like what do you feel like is the hardest aspect of tech for you?
Um Aim control.
Okay, that okay, interesting. It sounds like it kind of goes into you mentioned your like sort of the two skill sets aside from speed that you focus on are basically aim and tech. So, are there any things you've learned about improving at aim that you would want to share with us, either about the actual way that you practice or even just like pen grip and area and just everything surrounding aim? Are there any things that you've learned that you could share with us?
I changed my grip a lot. I tried like 4 different grips and I've been sticking with the grip that I have right now. But I think grip tape is pretty good for if you I guess the best comparison is like mouse drift. It's kind of like a like my grip slips,
Ah,
and that was
okay.
a really bad habit. It became like a habit more than it did like just my grip slipping. So grip tape was pretty good to get rid of that habit, and I still kind of have it.
A habit of like having your pen slip like intentional? You make it sound like it is on purpose.
Changing my grip mid play,
Oh, okay.
thinking that I am losing my grip, but I'm not actually losing my grip.
Oh, okay. That's actually an interesting point. I feel like I've experienced that as well, where it's like, especially if there's like a short pause, then I'll like readjust my grip just to have it end
Yeah.
up in the same position. And it's like, why did I do that? So yeah, I that makes a lot of sense.
And then
So
also, on the aim topic,
oh yeah.
I didn't use pen nibs.
Oh,
I didn't use pen nibs for all of 2020 and 2021, even most of this year. I bought pen nibs pretty recently though, because I thought it was a good investment to have that extra feedback because I play tap X aim.
oh, just like Ryuke.
Yeah,
Did you get it
another
from him?
another yeah. Well, sort of. I didn't know he tap X aimed, but I guess it was like kind of like over time a habit I got because I used to hover a lot, but then over time it just developed into tap X
What are the advantages of that for you? Is it just the
of
feedback?
tap X,
Yeah,
just the feedback pretty much.
I see. So you were basically mostly like, do you identify more as hover or drag or neither?
More hover.
Okay, that makes sense. And then these days, you got pen nibs recently. Wait, how did you have no pen nibs? How did that happen?
Uh, I got one of my pendants broke off when I was trying to take it off. It like snapped and it was stuck inside my pen.
Oh no.
And I was too lazy to buy a new pen, and I was also too lazy to buy new pen nibs. So I just stuck with it and I got used to it.
Oh, interesting. I guess it doesn't matter if you're just hovering.
Yeah.
So there's a question that came in from the forum that says thoughts on relax slash autopilot for warm up.
Relax autopilot for warm up.
Yep.
Uh I don't think it's very good because I think tapping and aiming kind of they're like synced, you know? You can't just practice one or
Right.
the other. You have to practice both. So it's pretty bad, in my opinion, to practice like relax and then not to have that aim tap coordination practice as well. Because you're kind of just practicing your aim with no like feedback, I guess, of you tapping
r-
and getting
Right.
that feedback. So you develop like kind of a bad habit. Because I from my experience, because I played like a month straight when I was six digit of just relax, and it messed me up in aim a lot.
Oh no. Oh,
And I feel like I haven't recovered since because I still have a bit of a like aim tap problem that I need to
oh,
figure out.
like the synchronization.
Yeah,
Do you feel like autopilot falls into that same category where it can really mess you up, or is it less extreme?
I think it's less extreme for autopilot, but I still think if you're going to practice, I think you should just decide to not tap or not use either of those mods. Because I feel like they're more of, like just fun mods. They're not really used for actually improving or like starting your day on OSU.
That on a somewhat similar topic, I want to ask about long stream practice maps as well. If you have any thoughts on those, and if they're beneficial at all, and if so, then what exactly they're helpful for.
I tried improving using those, but I didn't really get far. So I don't in my experience they weren't that beneficial. They were just more of like a benchmark for like how good I am at the time.
Okay, that makes sense. So, what exactly, or like, how do you typically structure your warm ups? Is there anything specific that you do, or is it very random? And I guess you might have like different warm ups for when you're really trying to play speed that day versus if you're playing other skill sets. But can you sort of walk us through what you do as your warm up?
Typically I just like F2 spam. I just F2 spam uh like very low 8 stars. Um, for speed, I think speed's like the only thing that I don't have to warm up for,
Oh, interesting.
and aim is like the thing I have to warm up for the heaviest.
Do you feel like
I think
that's
reading is like in the middle.
okay? That actually makes sense. I feel like it would be because you're sort of so like you spent so much time with speed, so to speak, that it's just like by far your strongest skill set.
Yeah. So I think that's for like a lot of speed players, I feel like, or most at least, where they just are able to get on and like at the very bare minimum do like average speed like 260 or 250, you know?
Right. Do you still like even these days have those sorts of like fluctuations in skill? Because you mentioned it was happening a lot as you were sort of rising up, especially throughout like 2019 and I guess even 2020. But these days, do you still experience those like fluctuations in skill level?
Quite a bit, yeah. Like sometimes it doesn't happen solely for speed now though. It happens sometimes with aim as well. Like I'll be really good at aiming, but then the next day I like can hardly aim very small jumps. It happens less with speed though. And the times that it does, it's like a very small jump in skill, like 300 BPM maybe, or 290 BPM, which is already stuff that I can usually do. So for speed, it doesn't happen much, but for aim, it happens a lot.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. So it's like very minor fluctuations at this point.
Yeah.
So were there any points like early on as a player where you sort of felt somewhat stuck at a certain like barrier of star rating or a certain type of map? I know you mentioned that like around 210 or even 200-ish when you were like not super focused on speed was like definitely a barrier for you, but aside from that, like even before then or even these days, are there any specific things that you were kind of like stuck on for a long time, and what exactly do you think was sort of enabled you to break past those barriers?
What skill sets I was stuck on?
Yeah, yeah, or like star rating walls or anything like that.
Uh, I don't really remember playing anything else except for like a bit of aim and speed, or like trying to do speed. I guess like my biggest barrier, like ever, was probably just trying to get my like tapping stamina higher.
For like
And
longer
then
streams.
yeah, because even though at the time I was like kind of decent at speed, after breaking that to like I think a lot of people have a 270 BPM barrier when they're practicing speed. And that took me a while to break. So when I did, I tried to push stamina for it because I didn't want to lose it like the next day.
Oh, okay. So sort of the difference between like first breaking through like that speed barrier and being able to do speed maps versus like really solidifying it by being able to play longer and longer like patterns or streams at that
Yeah,
BPM.
I think maybe like stream practice maps could be good for that, maybe to like benchmark how close you are.
Right.
But I think practicing solely like how KHD did, I don't know how he did that honestly, because it never worked for me. But I guess it's like more of like a preference thing. Like it could work for you, but it's good to try things out and see what like works best for you in terms of improving. Better than like having a bad mindset and like trying something out for a week and not improving at it and then like whining about it, you know?
That actually reminds me, you mentioned earlier that you sort of experimented with your grip a lot, and then like right now you're kind of sticking with one that you found. What do you think is the role of experimentation? Would you recommend everyone experiment with what they can? And also, when would you say that experimentation starts to go too far?
Uh, I mean, I've always stuck by like, if it's not broken, you don't need to fix it. So if your main goal is already being fulfilled, then you don't really have to experiment that much. But if you're trying to like, push yourself and like, let's say you're trying to do higher skill, like higher skill cap of aim, and you're being a little aim capped by your grip or by like your tapping style or not tapping style, your like aiming style, then I think experimenting is really good to figure out if it's just like a skill cap issue that you need to break through, or if it's like an issue that you can fix yourself by trying out different grips. And I think the same goes for speed and like tapping technique. Trying out different ways to stress your fingers, because stressing your tapping fingers is very bad. So usually, at least what I do is I strain my thumb on my spacebar. So
That
I
that
think
oh, you can finish.
I think straining yourself in other ways is a lot better, but figuring out the best way is more important than like just, you know, assuming that something will work for you and that it's better than just straining your main fingers, which I think anything is better than that. But if you're trying to improve, you need to find what's best for you.
Yeah, that reminds me of what Ryuke called like offloading strain, where like obviously it takes a lot of, I guess, effort or energy to push, especially for speed, but you don't want to be straining your actual tapping fingers. But basically anything else, like some people, as you mentioned, you sort of like push your thumb on your keyboard, and some people like push or like sort of flare out their pinky as well, or like just anything like that. But as you mentioned, sort of having that, like at least experimenting, especially if you do find yourself tensing your actual tapping fingers, that if you're able to experiment with different ways to offload that strain in a way that allows you to keep your actual tapping fingers as loose as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a little bit to figure out what finger to strain or like what way to strain, because I for a long time also did the pinky flaring or whatever. But uh then I saw the way Murami tapped, where he puts his thumb inwards onto the little like I don't know what it is, like the finger rest, I guess,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and most keyboards have. And I tried that, but my keyboard didn't have that, so I just used my spacebar, and it worked pretty well.
So are you
And I've
tapping with
been
Z and X?
G and H,
Okay, okay.
but my hands are pretty small, so it's able to.
Okay, that makes sense. So I'm curious also about a couple things, I guess. I think I'll start with hidden. It's something that you seem to play every now and then, but it seems like you prefer mostly to play it without hidden. Are there any, I guess, like ways that you got into, or like strategies you used to start playing with hidden? And are there any things that were really tricky for you when starting to play with hidden, or is it something that came naturally with just a little bit of practice?
I've been playing hidden for like I've been playing 75% hidden for like the past week. So I think I can. I also got my top play with hidden a while ago,
Oh,
or not my top play, but like my fourth top play. I got like almost a 900 with it.
oh yeah, yeah, I
So
see
I
that.
think Yeah, so I think I can consider myself a hidden abuser now, unfortunately.
Oh no, that's so sad.
But I think the biggest like barrier for hidden at least was unironically aim. I don't think it was streams at all. It was mostly aim, like jumps and stuff.
Are there any ways that you've learned to control your aim on especially higher BPM speed stuff? I'm not really talking about hidden right now, just kind of speed in general, Are there any ways that you've used to control your aim on higher BPM patterns?
Nothing in specific. I think it kind of helps that I have tap X aim as well, but I think I don't know many players who tap X aim, but I think if there are many, that they can agree that like there's gonna be like a skill cap eventually for that as well. Same way that there's going to be for single tapping
Yeah,
in terms of like feedback, you know.
right. So, okay, I have a couple questions about the tap X aim. So, like, if you're playing a stream, for example, do you end up dragging it or hovering?
I know people who mostly drag, but I hover for streams.
Okay, so you mostly tap down if it's like a jump, for example.
Yeah, if it's like a jump or like a really space like sliders and stuff, just anything
Okay,
that's with high spacing or just jumps.
okay, that makes sense.
Or actually, the I have a really weird like I guess it's like a habit. If I can't read something, I'll drag instead of hovering, which is really weird. I don't know why I do it, but if I can't read like a pattern or like I typically misread a pattern, I usually drag to keep my aim stable.
Ah, I feel like that kind of makes sense because it's like you want that extra feedback on the, like to make sure your cursor's in the right spot.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I like aim away for some reason. So I think dragging helps to keep my aim where I'm trying to aim.
Oh, like aim away as in like you kind of leave it too soon?
Yeah.
Okay. S that almost makes me wonder what makes you prefer hovering over dragging because you sort of seem like you've had a good amount of, I guess, quote unquote experience with both, and I'm sure that you've tried going through like experimenting with like only dragging or only ever hovering, and what exactly keeps you like incorporating hover into your play style?
Uh, uh dragging is like at least with my experience, it just feels like too slidey on what I use on my equipment. And hovering is like I'm able to feel where I'm aiming a lot more, which is kind of like counterintuitive because that's mostly what dragging is.
Okay, that actually makes sense. I think I appreciate your use of scientific vocabulary of uh dragging feeling slidey. I
Yeah.
definitely agree. So I'm curious if you had to start over all the way from the beginning, is there anything you would do differently, just sort of in general as you grinded the game?
Probably just grind other skill sets more often. So I think being an all-rounder player is like it seems like a pretty cool thing to do and seems pretty fun. At least for like the longevity of you playing the game. It's a lot more, you know, like it'll keep you going for a lot longer than being an aim one trick or a speed one trick.
Are there specific skill sets in particular that like you feel like you wish you had learned more of, or is it like just kind of everything in general?
Just kind of everything, but I think the main two is probably aim control and lower AR reading.
For aim control, I almost want to say that relax may have had an influence over that as well for you.
Yeah, I feel like it probably did. That's why I think that's one of the biggest regrets in all of like the time I've been playing Osu. In terms of my like improvement, it probably like halted my improvement a lot more than it should have if I weren't playing relaxed that often back then.
I feel like that's actually something a lot of people can relate to, is sort of having played relax a lot as a beginner and kind of messing up their synchronization. and it seems like you've mostly been able to overcome it for the most part. Are there any tips you would give to those people that are kind of going through like aim synchronization rehab, so to speak, where they're trying to break those bad habits that they learned from Relax? Is there any guidance you can give to those players sort of having gone through that yourself?
uh, I kind of just grinded it like from not from like the very bottom, but like from what was comfortable before I started doing that. Because I know a lot of people like they talk about like fundamentals and stuff, and to start from like the ground up to fix that. And I think that's pretty good for aim control, especially if or like aim synchronization. I can't speak, but like you know,
Yeah,
your aim and tapping sync.
yeah.
It's pretty good to relearn it every now and then if you're like struggling, at least. And I think if you're playing a lot of Relax, I don't think you have to go from like the ground up. You can like just start off on what you were comfortable with before you started playing Relax so often. And I think that's what I did.
That actually makes sense. Sort of like almost like not really bothering to, because like you must have had the aim sync to play those maps, like let's say like 1, 2, maybe like 3 stars or low 4 stars. And so like for you, like let's say you were FCing low 4 stars and then you started playing Relax a lot. And so in order to kind of go back, you sort of have to put yourself back down to like low 4, or maybe like, I don't know, high 4, low 5, whatever it is for you. That is like where it started, I guess, like where you started breaking the, or like the developing those bad habits. But yeah, that does make sense. And you sort of build up from there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, especially as you've sort of gotten like risen through the ranks, and even I think you've been top 50 for at least quite some time. I'm not actually completely sure how long you've been up there, but I'm curious if you've gotten any accusations for cheating in the past, and if so, what were some of the strangest or funniest, or I guess just most amusing accusations that you've gotten?
Um I haven't had any accusations recently, like the past year or two, but I my reputation when I was going into the community was already kind of fumbled because I got reported like 10 times
Oh my
for
god.
like 2019 and then 2020 and then up until 2021. So like all those 3 years I people thought I was cheating. And I think people still do think I'm cheating, but they aren't like as open about it.
What were those accusations about specifically?
Um
Like, what were they accusing you of?
Relax. Relax cheating.
Interesting.
Because one of the main arguments was that I went from rank 17K up to rank 2K in like 2 weeks.
Wait, what the heck?
Yeah, and then after that, I also did the Freedom Dives map that has the RL diff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I did the lower diff, and I almost FC'd it at rank 2K at the time, and it was like barely just loved as well. So the only other FC I think was the Hello Tom person,
Yeah.
whatever the name is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hello,
he
Tom.
was the only FC at the time.
Dang. Yeah, I'm looking at your Osu track right now, and yeah, that's definitely quite the spike. But I mean, how did you take it at the time? You sort of like at the time that was like right when you started taking the game really seriously, and really starting to interact a bit more with the community, and now like everyone just thinks you're a cheater. So what was sort of going through your head at that time, and what kept you going?
I was kind of well, that was also around the time that I had the ego, like I was talking about. So I wasn't really demotivated or anything. I was more like irritated. Um, and also the same time that I did that was the time that I tried to enter a tournament, like my first tournament ever, with a friend. But our rank range was apparently too big, or one of our ranks were too high for the tournament, even though it labeled that our ranks were well within reach. But after that, I just kind of started farming, and then I
Interesting.
reached rank 2K, and then people started thinking I was cheating.
Dang. And was that mostly just like the product of having grinded speed for so long and being able to play all those maps?
Oh, that was at the time that I couldn't do speed.
Oh,
That
okay.
was at the time when my skill cap was 220, I think, or 210,
Ah,
and I was still trying to grind for that. So it was mostly just aim farm that I was doing at the time.
interesting. That's actually interesting, as I feel like, well, you mentioned that relax was something that kind of hindered you, but at the same time, it seems like aim, sort of like Nomad aim specifically, was your strongest skill set for a long time.
Yeah, which is kind of like, it's kind of out of character because now I'm like the complete opposite. Now I can't do no bot aim at all.
I'm curious about Hard Rock as well. I'm not really noticing any Hard Rock throughout like any of this, like any of your history, to be honest. Is that a mod that you've messed with at all or practiced at all?
I've been trying to play it recently, but at the time, I don't think I really played much hard rock. Like I played DT, Nomad, Relax. Well, not really. That was at the time that I stopped playing Relax like heavily. Um, so it was mostly just Nomad and DT. I
I
never
see.
like touched hard rock or hidden.
I see. So Hidden you started learning recently.
Yeah,
I
because
see.
I don't think I'll make it very far with DT only, unfortunately.
All right. Okay, that's interesting. I'm curious. Like, do you feel like it's a lot easier to play Hidden with higher AR as opposed to like, I guess, normal or lower ARs?
Yeah, way easier. If I've always tried playing 3 mod with hidden if I can,
Oh,
or
like
like
AR
higher
11?
ARs. Yeah, but sometimes, or like back then, I was able to do DT hard rock instead. But eventually, over time, I realized that it's just a lot easier to use hidden for higher AR.
Why do you think that
But
is exactly?
uh, I have no clue. Just less clutter on the screen, I guess.
Okay.
Like removing approach circles and stuff. Just less cluttered. Could also be like personal preference because I know people that play DT hard rock and say that DT hard rock's a lot easier than reading it with hidden.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. That's kind of that preference aspect of it. So for AR11 in particular, do you feel like there's anything, I guess, quote unquote, different that you do to approach like that sort of maximum AR as opposed to any other like higher AR, or do you just kind of treat it as the like next step of AR and you kind of use the same process of just kind of grinding it? Like, are there specific ways that you try to process the nodes differently or focus differently, or is it mostly the same strategy, just a little faster?
Mostly just the same strategy, but a little faster. I know people who like they look at the individual notes. So I think that's another thing, like a preference type of thing with reading. Some people like look in the general area of where notes are, and some look like just directly at every single note.
Well, what strategy do you sort of fall under? What are you usually focused on, or how do you usually focus when you're playing the game in general?
The general area where the notes are going.
Okay. So you tend to use a lot of like peripheral vision, I guess.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know for me at least, and for most people, I think reading certain patterns is a lot easier looking at them individually than it is looking at them like as a whole. Like for example, squares are pretty hard for me to read and like aim, but if I look at them individually, it's a lot easier.
Like four individual circles.
Yeah,
I see. Let's see here. So there's a couple sort of. miscellaneous questions that came in. Actually, there's one that stands out that was sent in to you from someone named Bubs. They said, "Why are you such a troll?"
um, I'm not a troll. I'd like to put that out there. Thank you for the question, though.
Yeah. Have you
Yep.
never trolled ever?
Nope. Never trolled ever. I don't know who this Bubsy guy is, but I think he might be the troll. Actually,
Yeah, that does sound quite reasonable. I'm not sure why they would ask such a question to someone who never trolls.
yeah, that would be so odd.
What score that you've grinded are you, or just not even just grinded, but what score of yours would you say you're the most proud of?
What score am I the most proud of? Probably, hmm, probably Chrono Diver.
Oh, your top pin until 3 days ago when you got your
Yeah,
Into the Void score.
yeah. I think that's probably my. I wouldn't say peak because I can definitely get a lot better and probably redo that score. But my current score is it's probably my peak and like my personal favorite score at least.
Wait, I feel like I remember seeing your live play on that map.
Yeah, I think I've done a live play before with that.
Yeah, I remember that. Didn't you have like reused method or something with like the fire text on your stream overlay?
Yeah, I used to have reused method. I used to also have like I hate hidden in fire text,
What's the
which
context?
ended up getting stolen by Apostle. He stole my theme.
What's the story behind those fire texts on your overlay?
Uh I just found the fire text generator like randomly, and I decided to put it on my stream as like a kind of like a message to those people who play hidden. Like I hate hidden, and the reuse method. I don't know. That was just kind of random. I think it was like a friend joke that I used to have at the time.
What is the reused method? How did that start?
Uh, I can't remember honestly, but it was probably like a inside joke with some friends that I had.
So I'm actually curious, something somewhat related. I think was meant to ask this at the beginning, but I'm curious how your username came to be and your sort of username of, or your username history throughout OSU.
My username history. Uh the Osu Fenceful. That was my old username used to be Defenseful, so I just put them together. And then the Flimsy Lolly, I honestly don't know what that was. That was kind of a flop though. And then reused came from my Minecraft username because I eventually got the username reused on Minecraft. So I just transferred that over to Osu, and I've stuck with it since.
Was there a inspiration for this specific name?
For reused,
Yeah.
uh, it was like an upcoming name on MMC, and I wanted to like get like an OG username or like a semi OG username because those were pretty big at the time. I was like,
Ah,
it was like not really being spotted by anyone, so I took it.
okay. So you sort of saw it on the list of like names that were going to be available soon, and
Yeah,
it sort of stood out to you as one that was like pretty clean.
yeah, and I've not really had like a reason to really change it. I've changed it a few times. It doesn't show because I reverted my name, but I used to have the name Leitori Sana because of the VTuber.
Ah. So, do you have any current sort of end game goals for yourself in this game?
And the game goals,
Yes.
uh, compete in more tournaments, like eventually maybe.
Wait, what'd you say? You cut out.
Uh, uh, More tournaments like OWC eventually, like participate in them more,
Oh,
and then most of my pin scores that aren't like S ranks, I kind of want to FC.
And that's actually a good way to sort of break down goals. I just realized you have Into the Void here twice.
Oh, do I?
Yeah, you have a DT only.
Whoops. Yeah, I have the DT only score from when I grinded that before.
Someone asked about Mind Block, both in tournaments or also just kind of in single player. Do you have any experience with Mind Block in just kind of in general and your approach to, I guess, fixing it?
Mind block. I mean that there's a lot of maps that I'm mind blocked on now, and I think the only fix is like external, I guess, like flipping your monitor or putting on like a different mod, like hidden maybe.
Ah, so sort of like changing the like your actual setup to, or your settings, so to speak.
Yeah. I think another way is probably like changing the way you read stuff, like of the general area visual notes and try that out. Or like try a different way of aiming. Just like I guess mind block is like it could be traced down to mindset as well. With mind block, I think uh big factor is like mostly probably reading, like the way you read stuff. And I think the question was like something to do with streams. The biggest problem is probably like over reading the streams, like tensing up before you get to the stream because
Right.
you know that it's you like anticipate it. And I think the best like hello?
Um,
My mic disconnected on accident. Whoops.
okay, I thought that was me again. I was like,
No.
okay, here we go.
I think the best way of handling that is like just to not think about it because it also is like a big factor into mind blocking because it'll eventually lead to mind blocking. And I think um trying out different mods, like trying out if it's a no mod map, trying out hard rock or maybe trying out hidden. Or I guess for most people gamma would also probably help. So that's another thing. Um Mindset is probably a big factor into mind block and preventing mind block. I think mind block is like one of those things where you can't really like pinpoint it as like generally, but individually you can probably be a lot better at pinpointing it because it's like kind of like a person by person basis.
So, any exciting questions that you want to re-answer that were from the chat?
Not really. They were mostly just
Random.
like miscellaneous, you know.
Okay.
One was asking about my opinion on Xylus's hybrid tapping, like alternating, which I actually haven't heard of until now, where he faults, but he starts triples on his dominant finger.
I used to do that also.
I yeah, I've never heard of it until now, or at least I've never heard that like term.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a specific name for it. It's just like fake alternating, basically. Do you think you're capable of farming to top 10?
um, yeah, probably. I mean, now that I play hidden,
Oh, true.
unfortunately, I think I can.
Oh no, you seem to have a bit of spite towards the hidden mod.
I do. I despise it. At least in my opinion, I think it's solely a preference mod, unless you're playing lower AR, like below AR 8.5 or whatever,
All right.
where it gets harder to read. But anything above like AR 9, I think it's just solely preference. And I don't think it should really reward it like as much PP as it does. Like there's some maps where it rewards like a whole 80 extra for like very minimal difference.
Yeah, I see. So what do you think the hidden multiplier should be, or the hidden bonus, or should there even be?
I think it's a very like optimistic way of thinking to say like the very like the most perfect way it should be is like somehow the multiplier changes based on AR, or like the amount of PP rewards changes based off of AR, which I think it changes based off of how much combo, or like, yeah, how much combo the map is, I think. But I think it should be like, I feel like Hard Rock's a lot harder than Hidden. It's less of like a preference mod. It's like actually more skill cappy than Hidden. Hidden's like, I see most people like play Hidden like low AR, or like tech with Hidden, which those are pretty hard to do with Hidden.
Right.
But I think seeing someone do, the usual like farm map, or like something like Lionheart within DT, I don't really think much of it. I just think of it like, oh, this person's just trying to get like leaderboards or like extra PP out of it.
Someone asked, any idea on how to forget/get rid of bad tapping habits such as galloping if you instinctively tap like that?
I think that ties into like trying different ways of tapping, like trying out single tapping, trying out alternating, trying out like different hybrids, or different. I think another way. Uh, I think galloping also ties into how you read stuff, the same way that my bad habit of double tapping kind of ties into reading, I think. So I think changing the way you read probably also helps.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think galloping can also just come from like not having your hand or fingers be loose enough. And you sort of like instinctively, like if you see a stream and you sort of like panic and tense up, that can actually be a very like detrimental sort of cycle, so to speak.
Yeah. I think that's another thing that I kind of struggle with, and I think many people struggle with, is like, I guess like a way I would explain it is like overreading a stream. Like you tense up before a stream because you know it's coming up, and it leads to you like dying or like getting really bad act. And I
Yeah.
think that's more of like I think that leads to mind block. That's like one of the like patient zero signs of like mind blocking on something. So I think if you can like, you like think less about the play itself and like the outcome, and think more like, I at least what I do is I kind of just think about random things. I don't even think about the play I'm doing. I just think of like about other stuff.
Even on
And
like
sometimes
runs that you're kind of nervous about, or do you even feel nervous when you like are
I
holding
do
a
feel
good
pretty
score?
nervous. I struggle with nerves quite a bit, but I think it really depends on my perspective on the score. Because with Lionheart, I think a lot of people typically would get nervous, even though like unanimously everyone agrees that it's like a farm map, for like speed players.
Right.
But I think even with that mindset, people would obviously get nervous from that score, because it's 1000 PP if you get like really good accuracy with DT only, or like pretty average act with hidden DT. But at least with me, I kind of look past that. The way like I kind of look past how much it rewards, and I think more of like, is this a score I'll be happy over? And if so, I'll be nervous about it. But if not, then I'll kind of be more calm about the score.
So you mostly try to use like the expectation of the map itself, so to speak.
Yeah. Like for example, on Lionheart, I don't think I really had that much shake, like visibly. Like even at the end, I didn't really shake that much. But on something like Into the Void, I don't know if many people have this, but I got so nervous at the end of the map that my hands were going numb.
I've heard that before. I've heard some people say they experienced that.
Yeah, and that is like the only reason why I even choked, because my hands were going so numb, and my hand like stiffed up.
Oh no.
So I misread a slider and yeah, I'm an FC. But that's like a good example of like this is a score I'll be really happy over, even if I choke. And then compared to like Lionheart, like it's I did get my top play, but it's not like something I can't do again.
We talked a bit about hidden and the PP system, but are there any other things that you feel like you would improve about this game's ranking system? Either the PP calculation or even like having a completely different structure of ranking system or anything like that. What do you feel like should be changed about OSU's ranking system?
I'm probably one of the few people that think it's like fine right now, or at least like probably the best that it can be without breaking everything. So I think at least the way I see it, I think the best way to play Osu is to ignore rank and go more for personal scores and how you feel about like the scores you want to go for. And I think a better way of representing skill is probably tournaments on it, honestly, because tournaments kind of lead you to be more diverse in your skill sets rather than like playing for the meta. Like right now, it's like speed and like it used to be aim and like fiery jumps and stuff. So I think it probably is like I think in practice this would probably be bad, but like keeping one PP system for like a lifetime would probably be my answer. And just like kind of I don't know.
Like never reworking it?
Yeah. I've also seen people say that just they should just like go extremely chaotic and just make everything broken, like speed meta, aim meta, just everything.
Almost like everything's equally overweighted.
Yep. And I think that would be pretty interesting to watch.
That would definitely be interesting. I think that approach to the game of just kind of playing for maps and scores that you think are really fun for you, I think that's definitely one of the healthiest approaches, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of still struggle with it. Like my main thought process is just getting scores that I like. But obviously, like there's still that bit of me that's like, ooh, I'll gain a rank off this, or I'll like I'll get a pretty high performance points off this, you know.
Right.
But the main point is definitely just topping my scores and like doing the best that I can on scores that I like. And usually it's just like songs that I like that I try and go for. I don't think anyone's like ever asked this before, like in interviews or anything, because it's kind of like something that probably won't happen to most people. But I feel like to do with like accusations and stuff, like if you ever get to that point, I think the way you handle it kind of dictates on how your reputation will be like in the future. And I think that kind of shows with the way I handled it, because the way I handled the accusations was kind of bad. Like I still gave a live play and stuff, but like I guess my like the way I like showed myself, like personality wise, kind of ruined my reputation since then. And I think I don't know if anyone ever gets to that point where they're good enough to get accusated. I think you should focus more on the way you represent yourself than actually trying to like, because if you believe you're legit, then you shouldn't like overreact or anything. You should be like more calm than anything.
Yeah, I think especially that's actually a good point because I feel like those are like really pivotal moments where a lot of people are hearing about you for the first time, and that first impression can be really, really important.
Yeah. So I think if you like kind of fumble that with your ego or something, or like overreacting, like panicking, thinking you're gonna get false banned or something, then obviously people are gonna like suspect you're cheating even more because of your ego or something. So I think it's very like like unlikely to happen to most people, but it's still something to think about because it's even when it's unlikely, it's still pretty detrimental to your reputation if you ever become like a top player.
So, what exactly would you do if you had to go through that situation again?
If I ever got accusated again, like
Yeah,
witch hunted,
like what would your sort of process be, and how would you handle it, knowing what you know now?
I'd probably be way more calm about it because I don't have the ego that I used to have anymore. And I mean, I do live plays sometimes, occasionally, and I've made like the startup PC live play.
Oh, yep, huge.
Yeah, but I feel like as sad as it is to say, I feel like no matter how like in depth you are with your live plays, you can't really be too sure. I think the most sure that you can be is if you buy a whole new PC or like you go to a LAN tournament or something.
Yeah, I think LAN is definitely the biggest one.
Yeah, 'cause I think if you play at a LAN, it's like 99.9% guaranteed that you're legit.
Right.
Because cheats nowadays, man, they a lot of them have been detected and stuff, but there's still like hardware cheats and stuff like that. People are too technology is too far, man.
Oh, dang.
So I don't think you can really be too sure, even with like your average life play or like a startup life play, which is what most people consider to be like, like a guaranteed they're legit.
Right, like a gold standard of live plays.
Yeah. I think it's still good to do it,
Right.
but I think if you want like to get rid of accusations for good, then going to a LAN would probably be like your best option.
Someone sent in a question. They said, "At what point did you realize you were a top player?"
Um I kind of didn't really consider myself a top player until like I hit top 100, but like mentality wise, I probably consider myself like pretty pretty close when I was rank 200 because that was also at the time that I was like popping off and I was like setting a bunch of scores.
Oh,
And that was early of last year. That was early 2021. I was very stagnant on rank 500. I couldn't get past it. And then I met two friends, and I met one of them off of CS:GO, Wingman, unironically, and he invited me to his server, and I met another friend off some other server, and they were both friends, so they ended up like just being kind of like my wingman to sending me maps to farm,
oh, wait, that's actually
and
pretty
that's kind
cool.
of what helped. Yeah, they were like my main friends at the time, like my main friend group, a part of it, and they also helped a lot with sending maps that they figured were like in my skill range. And they were pretty right about it because a lot of the maps I was able to do, and most of them I did, like Loser Girl and Akatsuki Zukiyo, and also Chrono Diver was from them,
Oh, wow.
and Alice was also from them, and like a lot of my scores were from them.
Dang, that's actually really cool. So, sort of having those people that can recommend maps specifically for you.
Yeah, I think it's good to surround yourself in maybe not people like around your skill set or like skill, but like people around you who know what type of player you are, or like also play Osu and are familiar with how Osu is. It's good for like if you're competitive, and it's also just good for improving in general. Because that's what I used to do. I don't know if many people know this, but I knew Nineric when I was rank 15k and he was like rank 5k, and he was like my main competitor at the time. Like we both were like fighting for ranks, and I think he hit 3 digit before me, and then I hit 2 digit before him, and now he's surpassed me again.
Oh, wow.
But he's been like my main competitor though, for, like most of the time that I've known him, because we're both speed players. And I used to think of him as a top player back when he was ranked 5k. because like I was like, whoa, man, rank 5K. That's so good. And then little did I know we were both gonna be top 100 players, top 50.
Yeah, I remember having a similar experience when I like found someone who was like rank 8K. They like randomly messaged me. I was like, who's this top player? It's just messaging me out of nowhere. It was so crazy. It was like the highlight of my day. But yeah, so you mentioned sort of having people request maps specifically to you. That reminds me a bit about live streaming. What exactly interests you, or like what's the most enjoyable part about live streaming for you?
Hmm. I think the most enjoyable part about live streaming is just like probably like whenever you get into that like pop off season, you're like streaming yourself, setting a bunch of scores. It's like a good environment to be in. It's pretty fun because you got people hyping you up and you feel good about yourself because you're setting a bunch of scores that you didn't think you'd be able to set or whatever. I
Like just
think
kind
it's
of having everyone there.
yeah, it's pretty healthy. But I've seen how bad it can get like in MRX chat and most the popular streamers where there's like a lot of weird people and stuff. So it can be it gets to a point where it balances out, and then it gets to a point where it's like I feel like it's worse to stream, if anything.
Yeah, okay, I can definitely see that. Do you have any inspirations these days for, I guess, who or what motivates you to keep pushing yourself further?
Ryuk is still a pretty big inspiration, but I think probably the main ones, like right now, let me think. I think another main one is Shimon or Shimon, however
Oh,
you say it. And then Eric is also another inspiration. He's pretty good. I think those are the main ones: Ryuk, Shimon, and Eric. Back when I first knew about Shimon, he was like not even close to rank like 200, I think. Like he messaged me before, like saying like he wishes he had my speed and stuff.
oh,
And then like he just so happened to pop off, and now he's like top 10. He's top 5 now, actually.
yeah, that guy is crazy.
Yeah.
I remember people. I think I was streaming once and I was asking like, who are the up and coming players that are gonna go crazy? And some people were like Shimon. I was like, what? Who is that? And then I went to their profile and I was like, wait, you guys are so right.
Yeah. I think let me see. I kind of wish this is a bit off topic, but I wish Osu kept DMs from like years ago.
Kept what?
Sometimes they kept DMs, like
Oh, message
online
history.
DMs from like years ago, but sometimes they don't, and sometimes they like wipes for some reason.
Oh, you can set uh in your OSU options. There's an option to log private messages.
Oh yeah,
And it's off by default. I don't know why it's off by default, but I recommend everyone turn it on.
I think I will do that because there's a lot of DMs that I have or that I remember, and they just don't show up anymore.
Yeah, I think archiving DMs is like one of the greatest things, or just archiving in general. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah,
Someone sent in a question. They said, "Do you think speed is muscles or technique or both?"
I think speed is solely technique. I have no muscle at all, man. I think if anything, probably getting more muscle would probably be more detrimental to speed because of the way I guess tensing works and the way you like tense your muscles. It'd probably be a lot harder to do it if you had more muscle, which is why you don't really see a lot of strong Usu players who are speed players. They're mostly like twigs.
Someone asked, this is sort of about like losing your skill, or like I guess feeling worried about losing skill, they sent a question saying that they like whenever they feel like they've mastered a skill, they have this sort of worry in the back of their mind that they might lose it someday. Do you have any advice for people that are sort of anxious about losing, like quote unquote, losing skill that they've developed?
What was the question?
Like, if you feel like you learned a skill and you're sort of anxious about like it going away, or like those sorts of like skill resets that we were talking about, do you have any advice for people that sort of feel anxious about potentially losing their skill at some point in the future?
Uh, I think maintaining the skill is probably like the hardest thing in OSU, because I think if you have enough motivation, you can probably like train any skill, but it's harder to maintain it than it is to get it. And I think at least for me, speed was way harder to get than it was to maintain. Um, I don't know how it is for more like most other people's opinions, but I think that's how it was for me at least. And um, for like training more diverse skills, at least the way I see it, is if you're worried about losing your current skill set that you're really good at, like for example, me, speed. I still play speed if I'm practicing another skill set, but I balance it in kind of like a 25% speed and then 75% whatever skill set I'm trying to practice, or like a majority of like the skill sets I'm trying to practice are like 75% and then 25% speed.
That actually makes sense. I feel like a lot of people run into this issue when they're trying to work on weaknesses, where they start to completely neglect those skills that were once their strength, and then those end up becoming their new weakness.
Yeah. That's like I guess you could like call it a like bad mindset, because it's like you're under the impression that you're too good at that you can just keep it, or you're under the impression that you can eventually get it back like easily. But I've seen with a lot of people, they like barely neglect it for like even a few days and they're already like down the gutter in that skill set, and they need to like de-rust for like a week straight. So I think like a good balance of whatever skill set you're good at and then what you're trying to practice. I think I'd say at least it's like if it's one other skill set, it'd probably be like 50-50, you know?
Right.
But if you're trying to maintain like your main skill set and a bunch of other skill sets you're trying to learn, like tech or aim control or like reading, maybe 25% of your main skill set that you're good at and trying to maintain, and then 75% of whatever other skill sets you're trying to learn. And
That
then
makes
kind of
sense.
like keep that as like a routine, I guess. And then eventually, I'd assume at least in practice, maybe you'd like become more diverse doing that than you would just practicing the one skill set and then 25% of the new skill set you're trying to learn. It's like learning a new language. Think of it like that.
Right.
Like the more time you divert from your main language into the new one you're trying to learn will impact how fast you learn that language, and it will also impact how quickly you lose your other language.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Someone asked, what would you suggest to someone that doesn't have a lot of free time but still wants to improve efficiently?
Um, I don't really have much advice for that because I've never um had an issue with free time. uh, but I think if you're trying to improve with no free time, I think the best way to do it is to make like a collection. Like if you want the most optimal warm up, like make a collection for what you suspect is like the best for warming up. Like a collection for aim warm up or like speed warm up or like reading, and then just play those when you're trying to warm up. Um, And then I think collections are just really useful for trying to do things the most optimal way. Like if you're trying to practice a score or like a certain skill set, collections are pretty good for that. And then warming up, having a warm up collection. So I think just being more optimal about the way you play Osu will probably help if you have no free time. But if you're just playing for fun, then obviously I don't think free time is really that much of an issue if you're just playing Osu in your free time for fun. But if you're trying to improve, collections are definitely really useful, and you should definitely be using those.
Yeah, I think being able to organize your practice sessions, especially with, as you mentioned, like having specific maps that you feel like work really, really well for you, that's definitely a good point for, I guess, making the most of your sessions. Someone asked, what are your thoughts on Osu Laser?
Osu Laser. I think, personally, from my experience, the way it runs, like performance-wise, it's a lot worse than normal Osu. So I haven't used it, but I like the UI a lot more. It's definitely like a lot nicer to watch people play Laser, and it's also definitely like a lot more modern, I guess. I guess note lock being removed as well is a bit odd. I don't think having note lock the way it is right now is very good, but I don't think having note lock removed as a whole is good either. I think eventually they'll figure out a way like to implement note lock and not be as like terrible as it is right now. Because even like the slightest bit of like I guess like the slightest bit of note lock will cause you to like die in an entire section.
Yeah, I think in Osu Laser there is actually a note lock, but it's just not invasive to the point where it makes you chain miss if you miss one note in like a stream or a pattern, for example. But like if you're playing a reading map and you play the notes out of order, then you do still get note locked.
Oh well, then I think that's good.
Okay.
I think that's a good change.
Someone asked about keyboard switches. Is that something you have experience with? And do you have a favorite keyboard or favorite switch?
Keyboard switches. I haven't really had any experience with like a variety of switches. My main thing though was I did play on switches. I played on silver switches. And one of the things that I remember hearing about was from a lot of players. They a lot of them agreed that speed switches were pretty bad. I was like, what? Isn't it better? It's you can tap like quicker, you know? So I started using them, and they were like pretty okay. I mean, I got used to them pretty quickly, and that's kind of what I've been playing with until recently when I got the Apex Pro, and now I use the Wooting, and I use like 0.2 actuation. But I remember Ryuk being one of the people that were like in their improvement thingy. They he said like speed switches is like a really bad switch. And I was like, you're wrong.
Oh, in his like speed talk way back when?
Yeah, but it wasn't just him. It was like a lot of other people. It was like mostly a like opinion most people had.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think a lot of people have moved on from that opinion.
Yeah, I even asked Ryuke when we did an interview with him yesterday, and I brought up speed switches, and he said he retracts his statement from back then, and that you can basically just use whatever switch you want.
Yeah, switches will always be like just preference, honestly. But I think more than switches are like kind of just preference, but I think keyboards build quality is a lot more important. Like at least with me, the way I tap is like I tap really hard. So when I used a Ducky 1-2 Mini, it broke within a month
Oh
of
no.
me playing with it, and it started double tapping. So I moved on from that to the HyperX Origin, and that broke within 2 months. So I moved on from those two keyboards onto some like Razer keyboard. I don't remember what it was, but that one was broken from the get-go because the wire that it came with was really faulty. But I stuck with it until I got the Apex Pro. And I think both the Apex Pro and Wooting are like pretty good build quality. Neither of them broke for the time that I've had them. And you're able to change like the actuation and stuff. And then with the Wooting that has like the rapid trigger feature.
What exactly does the Wooting keyboard help with?
Finger lock. I think that's the only thing that it can help with. I think whenever Apollo made that tweet about Wooting, I think it was a very like it was such a panic tweet. It was so wrong about what Wooting actually is. But it was like saying like, oh, these speed players are like hiding this from you because they're improving their speed from this. But in reality, it's like Wooting only helps with finger lock, and I guess in theory, if you don't finger lock on something, it means you're comfortable on that BPM. So
Right.
in theory, yes, you can get better at like higher BPMs because you're not finger locking. But that still doesn't mean you're comfortable at that BPM because eventually, let's say like I play 310 BPM and I don't finger lock, but I start to understream like easily. So even though I'm not finger locking, which is like a sign of, comfortability on that BPM, I'm still understreaming it and like getting really bad act. So I think it's good for removing finger lock, but it's not good for instant speed improvement like people say it is.
Someone asked, are you ever going to come back to Mindplex Clans?
Nope. I never even played that. I played it like once.
Oh, that's such a fast no.
Yeah, I played it like once because of my brother.
Right. I think the other aspect of peripherals for the most part is monitor and refresh rate, something that people are talking about in actually the live chat right now. Do you have thoughts on monitor refresh rate and how it impacts gameplay?
I mean, I use 280 hertz, but I think the switch from 60 hertz to 144 hertz, as like most people say, is the biggest change that you'll ever get. Because me switching from 144 to 280 didn't really feel that huge of an improvement in like any aspect. But I think I knew people like old friends and stuff who played on 60 hertz and were able to do 3 mod and stuff like that. So I don't think it's quote unquote necessary to like read better or play better in Usu. I think if anything, higher refresh rate's a lot more important for like FPS games, or like just like FPS games where you're like requiring a lot more sudden movements and stuff like that, and where you need higher refresh rate.
Oh, where like the
But in
whole
something
screen
like
kind of moves.
but in something like Osu where it's like, just a board on the screen, you don't really need anything higher than 60. But if you are going to go higher than 60, 144 hertz is definitely a good improvement. It's the biggest improvement you'll see
That makes sense.
because 144 to 240 or 280 isn't really that big.
All right. I think now seems like a decent spot to start wrapping up. Do you have any final opinions or things that you'd like to shout out and share with the world?
Not really. I think if I had to give like my best advice for Osu as a whole, I think ignoring other people's opinions on what's best is the best way to go about it, because that's what I did at least. Like literally everyone that I knew at the time, or like all the top players and stuff, were always like talking about what's best. Like speed silvers are bad, or like alternating. Unironically, a lot of people back then when I played said full ulting is bad, and that single tapping is better. So that was another thing that I just went against, and eventually those two things became like, I guess not really the norm, but like, well respected and more like I guess
like
more
normalized.
common. Yeah. So I think if you're going to try and improve, just kind of you can take it into note, use it as like an opinion at that, not really a suggestion, or not a suggestion, like a necessity, I guess.
Yeah, I think that that's actually a really good point to emphasize, especially for people that are listening to a lot of these interviews. Is that like we're not here to do that exact thing, so to speak. Like we're not here to try telling you what is best or not. We're just kind of giving you many perspectives of different people and their experiences with different things, just to sort of share their perspective on, I don't know, just the game and things that they've learned along the way.
Yeah. I mean, it's always good to have different perspectives. You can't really, at least in my opinion, you can't improve as fast as you might be able to if you don't see the way other people play as well. Because if you like think about it, like if you're playing like an FPS game or something, and someone plays on like the same sensitivity as you, and they're like a pro player, you'll be like, oh, this guy got to where he is with the same, like, I guess, spec as me, or like best the same setting. So it kind of like is like a motivator. And then I guess with Osu, um, seeing the way people improve at certain skill sets with maybe how most people would consider like bad hardware. Like I know some people who are able to do 270 BPM on a laptop, and most people would be like, "That's crazy," because it is crazy, but they are able to do it, and I think that's a good motivator to be like, if this guy can do it, I can do it. Like it's just my opinion though.
No, I definitely agree with that. You sort of have that reassurance, if nothing else, that someone else is able to make it all the way to the top using those same settings that you're a little unsure about. So I definitely agree. There's a lot of value in that. But yeah, I think that is probably going to wrap things up. I appreciate you taking all this time and your patience with my internet cutting out. But
There's
uh,
no issue, man.
yeah, thanks again for being here and everyone for listening. Those listening live, join us in around 3 hours for our interview with Fancy Lad. And yeah, I think that's just about gonna do it. Thanks again, and we will see you
Thank you for
all.
having me, man.
Yeah, thanks for joining. See you all next time.